Welcome to Daily Living with Father Chapin, where we cruise through the Catholic liturgy of the Word, trying to dig out the deeper meanings of Scripture and how they might apply to our daily living. Yes, my friend, that is what we do. Sometimes the Bible can be a bit confusing, so we bust it down like a fraction. We're asking questions along the way, questions like, hey, what do these Gospels have to do with me? How can I take these Gospels? They come to me each and every week in the Catholic liturgy of the Word and apply them into my daily living so that I can become a reflection of God's love to a world, let's face it, don't know God for sure, and definitely is in deep need of more love. Don't you think? I mean, take a look around. There's a lot of bad news out there. How can I take the good news and apply it into my daily living so that I can become, well, a light in that darkness? I want to be a tool in the hand of God, making present His kingdom, not someday, but today and every day. And that's what this show is all about. And I'm so glad that you could join us today as we celebrate Passion Sunday, or Palm Sunday as it is known. Oh, we got a good show. Now, the gospel today is so long that we're going to do things just a little differently. And we're just going to jump into the theme of what today is all about. So you buckle up and get ready for the ride, my friend, because it's going to be a good one. This is Daily Living. I'm Father Chapin. You hang out. We'll be right back, and we are going to get into this amazing story that the church gives us every year on Palm Sunday. Hi, this is Father Chapin, host of Daily Living. You know what's amazing is I'll be in the grocery store or maybe walking down the street, and a complete stranger will come up to me and say, I watch your show each and every week. Don't go to church, but I watch your show. And I'm thinking, how powerful is that? And the only way I can reach that person is through media. Now, the problem with media is it's very expensive. But if you would like to help me reach that person, please consider a contribution to Daily Living at 325 West Main Street, White Sulphur Springs, 24986. And together, you and I can take the good news to a lost world.
Thank you for watching Daily Living with Father Chapin. To help support this television ministry, please send your tax-deductible donations to Daily Living, 325 West Main Street, White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, 24986.
Welcome back to Daily Living. So today we celebrate Palm Sunday, also known as Passion Sunday. Today marks the beginning of what is known throughout the world as Holy Week, which will find its crescendo in Easter Sunday, which of course is the top of the mountain when it comes to Christian worship. He is risen, alleluia, alleluia. Now, these days it seems like Christmas, much like the moon, has eclipsed Easter when it comes to its importance in the Christian calendar. That's a good way of looking at it, really, because in a lunar eclipse, if you look really closely at the moon, you'll see the light around the moon, and that light around the moon that gives Christmas its definition is Easter, right? So Christmas is kind of marked with the festivities, the tinsel, the glitter, you know, the family and friends singing around the fire, joy to the world. Easter has been relegated to a wearing your best clothes, going to church, maybe an Easter egg hunt, maybe a big meal, but what does it really mean? Well, what it really means is that the tomb is empty. It's the most important day of our faith. Without an empty tomb, Paul writes that our faith would be meaningless. And today we begin the celebration of that great mystery. Now, Palm Sunday, like I said, also referred to as Passion Sunday, has its own challenges because every year on this day we read the Passion, which is long, which creates a bit of a problem because it doesn't leave a whole lot of room to talk about it, because if you make the Mass more than an hour, you're going to get a revolt. So what to do? Well, here on television, to read the Passion, it just would seem too long. And again, wouldn't have a whole lot of time to talk about it. So what do you say we just take a little slice out of the Passion, just a little nugget, and kind of work out from there? Now, of course, the Passion is in all four Gospels, some version. But the nugget that I want to talk about today can be found exclusively in the Gospel of John. But it makes a whole lot more sense if you know the whole story. So I would encourage you to take your Bible and read the Passion. Read all the different versions. They're similar, but they have different details. And like I said, the nugget that we're talking about today can be found exclusively in the Gospel of John. So let's set the table. The high priest, the religious leadership, backed by the Sanhedrin, which is kind of like Senate, Congress, Supreme Court, all wrapped into one for Judaism, they've been watching Jesus, and well, he's a problem. He's a problem because he's been challenging their authority, and they don't take too kindly to that. In their minds, he's confusing the people with this radical message. He's calling Yahweh his father, and he's stirring up revolution, which in the end they believe is going to get everybody killed. So it's a problem. They've tried to stop him, but they can't. They try to trap him, but they can't. They'd love to just arrest him, but they can't because the crowds have such support for Jesus. They can't just put him in jail because he's going to become a symbol of repression. They're going to demand his release. They're much better off with him dead. But that poses a problem as well because they, of course, are an occupied nation. Those occupiers would be Rome. And Rome has made it very clear that nobody can put anybody to death. Only Rome can do that, right? So after a lot of backroom dealing, they've decided to make their move. And they wait to arrest Jesus at night when nobody's looking. They drag him in front of a court at night and try him in secret, which, by the way, is against their own law, which says nobody can be tried in secret. But, well, it kind of gets back to what we were talking about a few weeks ago, you know, the situational ethics, right? It was wrong, yeah, but it was for the greater good, at least in their own minds. So after they have put him on trial, they drag him in front of Pontius Pilate, who does have the authority to put him to death. Now, of course, when they get to Pilate's house, they don't enter his house because Jews are not allowed to enter the home of a Gentile. That would make them unclean. A righteous man entering the home of a Gentile, they become ritually unclean. They'd have to go through all this cleansing. You know, with Passover coming up, they just, they stayed on the porch. All right? So they're on the porch, and Pilate asks, what are they charging this man Jesus with? It's clear to Pilate that, well, this is a charade. And he don't want to be a part of it. He's basically, just leave me out of it. Go judge him for yourself, okay? Which is when they say, well, the law does not permit us to put somebody to death, which that definitely gets his attention. To death? You want to kill this man? What are you accusing this man of? They say sedition, which is, of course, another word for treason. They are claiming that this man, Jesus, is trying to overthrow the authority of Rome itself, which, of course, that would concern Pilate. But Pilate, he don't believe it. He sees right through it. He looks at Jesus. He does not see a revolutionary. He looks at him. He doesn't see a warrior. He looks at him. He doesn't see a king. Now, to add to Pilate's woes, and it would take a long time to really get into all the reasons why, but let's just suffice to say, Pilate is not a fan of the Jews, okay? He resents being appointed to this backwoods outpost called Israel in the kingdom of Rome, and consequently, he hates the very people that he's assigned to rule. Now, it's starting to get real personal here because Pilate can sense that he's being manipulated by these people to further their agenda. Now, through the centuries, I think often Pilate is portrayed as a man with redeeming qualities. He really didn't want to do this. He felt really sorry for Jesus. My friend, nothing could be further from the truth. That is a myth. Pontius Pilate was a ruthless man who was full of hatred and had no problem killing Jews, all right? And often did for no reason at all. In fact, it got so bad, his viciousness, that neighboring Roman prefects wrote letters to Rome about his behavior, and he was summoned to Rome and fired, all right? But let's get back to this moment here. Pilate takes Jesus away from these people, brings him inside, away from the crowds, to ascertain the truth of this situation. And he asks him flat out, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He's just trying to figure out, are you a threat? Are you a threat? Are you really trying to start a revolution? Which I imagine he sees as highly unlikely. And Jesus responds with something very curious. He says, "Do you ask me this of your own accord, or did others tell you about me?" Which is an odd question, given the circumstance, right? In other words, is it the Spirit whispering in your ear, or are you simply responding to these guys on the front porch, right? Do you really want to know, or are you simply part of this charade? Now, that doesn't sit too well with Pilate, and he gets a bit snarky. He goes, "Well, I'm not a Jew, am I? Your people have brought me to you. I mean, your people have brought you to me, okay? What have you done? Why should I even spend 30 seconds with you?" Now, here's the nugget, okay? So get out your yellow highlighter. This is Daily Living. I'm Father Chapin. You hang out. We'll be right back, and we're going to get into the nugget here as we consider this amazing Palm Sunday. Hi, this is Father Chapin, host of Daily Living. What a pleasure it is to come into your home each and every week to spread the good news, but it's very expensive. Now, I got good news and bad news. The good news is we got plenty of money. The bad news is still in your pocket. So if you'd like to help the ministry, please send a check to Daily Living at 325 West Main Street, White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, 24986, and together we take the good news to a lost world. Welcome back to Daily Living. Now, just for the break, I had told you to get out the yellow highlighter, okay? Because this is it. We're going to the deep end of the pool right here, the heart of the matter. And it all really starts in the 36th verse of the 18th chapter of the Gospel of John. Jesus answered, "My kingdom does not belong to this world. If my kingdom did belong to this world, my attendants would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not here." Now, this definitely perks up the ears of Pilate. All of a sudden, things get interesting. "So, you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say I am a king." Which seems to be suggesting somehow that Pilate doesn't have the capacity to even understand who Jesus really is. So, here we are. I want you to get out that yellow highlighter. "For this I was born. For this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Whoever belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Okay, this is what we're going to be talking about today. Truth. Because the response that comes from Pilate, from this remark, is a response that continues to ring 2,000 years later throughout this world every day. Truth? What is truth? Let's talk about Pilate for a second. Okay, it's interesting that as soon as Pilate says this, truth, what is truth? He walks away. He walks back out to the porch because it doesn't seem like he's all that interested in the answer. He walks back out of the porch and says, basically, "I find no guilt in this man." It's ridiculous, okay? But back to the question, truth. What is truth? Like I said, that question continues to ring out to this day. Truth, what is truth? For this I was born. For this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. You know, That kind of reminds me of that voice from the cloud from the Transfiguration. Remember that voice? Okay, do you remember what he said? He said, "This is my son. Listen to him." Truth, what is truth? Well, truth is a concept that's kind of hard to fully wrap our mind around. Truth is often very difficult to define. Plato said, if we can know the truth, if we sublimate our minds to the truth, which, what's that word, sublimate? It means to divert, to modify, to convert. Another philosopher put it a great way. Okay, our understanding is not capable of knowing what the truth is. So it seems like truth is elusive. And it kind of harkens back to that tree of the knowledge between good and evil that the Father warned us from the very beginning we are incapable of navigating. Now, according to these two philosophers, truth is elusive and hard to get, maybe even impossible to get. Now, of course, today we rely on science for truth. And while science is a useful tool to the journey into truth, even the most hardened scientists will tell you it's not about the truth, it's about getting closer to the truth. We can see this play out in our judicial system. How often people will go to court seeking truth only to leave disappointed when they realize that, well, that's really not what the judicial system's about in the first place. It's not about truth. It's about human approximation of the truth. We call this justice. And if you talk to any lawyer, they will tell you that finding out the truth is really not their job anyway. Their job is to vigorously represent their client in the best way that they can. Determining guilt or innocence really isn't part of the deal. Consequently, often the well-crafted lie is twisted into something that resembles the truth. That's the world that we live in. Now let's get back to this. For this I was born, for this I came into the world to testify to the truth. Now, that sounds like a mission statement to me. I imagine if I were to go out in the street and ask the random people going by, hey, why did Jesus come into the world? I think that the vast majority of people would say something to the effect of, well, he came to die on the cross for our sins so that we can go to heaven someday. And let me tell you, that is absolutely true. Our faith is based on that reality. But let's look at what Jesus himself says. What was his reason for coming into the world? For this I was born. For this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth hears my voice. What does that really mean? Well, number one, it means that there definitely is such a thing as truth. And number two, Jesus came to show us what that truth is. For this I came to testify to the truth. That word testify means to give evidence, to serve as proof of something that exists, right? That is the mission statement of Jesus. But you see, there's a problem. We live in a world that rejects the very notion of an absolute truth. We live in a world where truth has been relegated to an opinion. My truth is just as good as your truth. And anybody that says yes and anything different is an intolerant, bigot, hater. Okay? We live in a world that says, when Jesus says, for this I was born, for this I came into the world to testify the truth, that responds in harmony. Truth? What is truth? But just like Pilate, we don't even wait for the answer because frankly, we're not all that interested. We live in a world where black and white has been morphed into the gray of political correctness. Consequently, truth becomes relative, which means that truth is based on your circumstance and your opinion, and my truth and your truth are equally valid. Now, the anger that you can stoke expressing anything different than that is shocking. Hey man, if that works for you, fine, but don't lay it on me. And there are many examples of this. One tragic example is the pro-life, pro-choice movement, okay, or debate. First of all, I have to say, labeling the pro-lifers as against choice is just Well, it would be laughable if it wasn't so sad. But it's all about the language, right? We're against choice if we are pro-life. And terminating the life of a fetus becomes reproductive rights, okay? In other words, if you crazy pro-lifers want to believe that the fetus is a human being, that's fine, but just don't put that truth on me, because truth is a point of view. It's relative, right? And as they pass out their leaflets defending reproductive rights, on the bottom it will read, "We will not tolerate intolerance," right? Consequently, tolerance becomes relativism. And the greatest enemy to relativism is absolute truth, right? Absolute truth is rejected by relativism. In fact, the late, great John Paul II warned that the demise of Western civilization will come in the form of creeping relativism. It's almost like the former pontiff actually knew what he was talking about, really. Creeping relativism. That's our world today. Truth is relative to the individual. Now, if that's the case, then what is truth? Is there such a thing as truth? And if so, how can we find it? What can we possibly know about truth? Well, we know it might exist, but what does it mean? Jesus says it must exist, okay? Because he came into the world to testify to it. And anybody who belongs to the truth listens to his voice. So what is this truth? How can we define what is absolutely true? Well, I got one for you, okay? I want you to open up your minds really wide and let me dump this in. I want you to open up your ears really wide to hear this, okay? You ready? Okay. This is the truth. Something cannot create itself, right? Isn't that true? I mean, think about it. In order to bring something into existence, it must exist prior to performing the action of bringing itself into existence, right? And that's not possible. I mean, isn't that true? Because if you already exist, you cannot create that which already is. So what that means is if you run that through anybody's truth, anybody's science, anybody's religion, theology, philosophy, whatever, rational thought, at the end of the day, nothing can create itself. Isn't that true? Which points to a creator, which Aquinas calls the unmoved mover. So that's a truth, right? We were created. So a second truth is that all truth comes from that creator. Now, as far as relativism goes, it's pretty obvious where that all got started. It really comes back to the tree. God told Adam and Eve not to eat of its fruit. And, well, a lot of us think of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is all about good and all about evil, but that's not the case. The truth is that there's a seed of deception in just about every truth. And there is a seed of truth in just about every deception. How can I even put this? Consider for a moment the phrase to look both high and low. They call that a merism, all right? It's a combination of two words that represent both sides, right? High and low. So I have a question. When I say I'm looking high and low, doesn't that necessarily mean that I've been looking between as well, right? Just as when the scriptures tell us that God created both heaven and earth, wouldn't that suggest that he made everything between heaven and earth, right? That's a merism of everything. It's precisely the gray between good and evil, which is where we live. This is the gray that's so poisonous that God warned us to stay away from. He knew we were incapable of navigating the gray. It's not about perfect good. It's not about perfect evil. It's always about a mixture of the two. The concepts of situational ethics, the necessary evil, the white lie, it all comes out of this. This is where relativism is born, the world that we live in today. Now, often we might first perceive something as a good thing. And in the end, it turns out to be not such a good thing. Or how about this? Oftentimes we will judge something as a really bad thing, but in the end it turns out to be a really good thing. I mean, isn't that true? Once again, it's that navigation. Truth What is truth? Well, I gotta say, we gotta revisit the words of Jesus. For this I was born. For this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Jesus was born into a fallen world, and he points to the truth. So how do you find it? Well, number one, the voice from heaven. Remember, from the cloud, this is my son, listen to him. And since we don't have Jesus incarnate in flesh, speaking to us, walking this world today in the flesh, okay, we have to rely on his word. So one way of seeking the truth is spending time with his word. And if you're not spending any time reading his word, then are you really looking? Number two, how can we find this truth? Well, Jesus clearly defines us as telling us that we can find the truth in the Spirit. You can read about this all in the 14th chapter of John. He will not leave us orphans. He promises to send us the Holy Spirit, what he calls the Comforter. The Comforter will teach us all things, will bring everything that he ever said to our remembrance, everything that he ever told us. So, how do we find the truth? Jesus came into this world to testify to the truth. And if we seek him, he will reveal that truth to us. But let me warn you right away. Be prepared, if you accept his truth, to be rejected by this world. Be prepared to be called a bigot, intolerant, a hater. Who knows? They might even call you a Christian. You know, every day in this country, somebody does something nice for somebody else. Today, why don't you let that somebody be you? This is Daily Living. I'm Father Chapin. Hope you can come back next week and we'll do it again. Until then, I hope you let God live in your life. And I bless you in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.